as far as when this came together. So the Eagles were really big game hunting all offseason as far as targets and
I like the way you describe that. Yeah. I like the way you describe that. That was really, huh?
You can steal it if you want.
You think you created it? I do like the way you described that, though. That is maybe your term there in the entire, free agency.
Could have created it. It's true.
These guys are hunting exotics out here. Big game hunters over there. They were in the market. What? Tyreek Hill, right?
Let me clear my throat. You come closer. Where y'all at? No, he doesn't get off the press. No, I haven't seen him get off the press yet. He does a great job when you can put him in motion, when you can get a little trick erasure going. So that's Arizona. But when you're talking about man to man, right? Where your machismo, where your chest hairs are poking out, that young man ain't got none. We one game away. Blow up. We playing for something, man. We playing for something. This gotta mean something to you. It gotta mean something. Everything you got. Let's finish this.
Do it, fellas.
Let's go.
Let's do it, fellas.
Finish 1, 2, 3.
Finish.
Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Saint. Yo, bro, I was outside today when I was working. Yo, it was a beat. I don't know what the fuck kind of beat this is called. I could probably look it up, because like one night I was in the Arab store, and it was a fucking, like, I don't know what kind of moth it was, but it was pink and yellow. Like, I called it pink lemonade, and I looked it up online, and it told me what it was. So I could probably look up the shit. I think they call these like Japanese hornets or some shit like this. But this shit is huge, bro. Like, it looked like if it sting me, I'm probably gonna pass the fuck out. Like, that's what it looked like. And I done been stung a couple times in my life. One of the weirdest shits that ever happened to me when I had got stung was I had on slides. And this is why I wear I'm an off and on type of motherfucker. I usually wear socks with slides, like I usually wear footies with slides. But sometimes, I'm lazy enough to not put no socks on with my slides, bro. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But that day, I had walked outside the crib, and I was walking to the mailbox, and a bee flew right in between my foot and my slide as I was walking. And when I stepped down, that shit stung the fuck out of my foot, bro. I was mad as hell, because I was like, yo, do you know the chances of that bee flying in between my foot and my slide as I walk up, and my foot, come up from the slide and come back down? Do you know how improbable that was? And the fact that that shit happened, from that day forward, I just been like, fuck bees, bro. But the hornet, or whatever you want to call it, that I just saw, like, for one, last year, bro, it was a huge, like, I think you call it a beehive. It was like a huge one in a tree in my backyard. Like, it was huge. Like, it was as big as a basketball. And for some reason, I did not knock that shit down in the wintertime. And when my cousin came through, he was like, you do know that they just gonna rebuild that shit, right? And keep it going. You should have just knocked it down. My aunt wanted me to knock that shit down and bring it to her so she could hang it up at her daycare. And then I just saw this reporter, Rudy Gobert, getting stung by his own pet bees. Bro, bees are not pets. It's just like snakes are not pets. Lizards are not snakes. Are not pets. Bro, you can't take a snake on a walk. You do not treat a snake like a dog. You got to understand, pet is basically another term for slave, because that's what these animals is. You just treat them good, so you call them pet instead of slave. But if you treated them bad, you call them slave. I guess you could say that is a snake, but you can't even take snakes on walks and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, some people be like, you can't take a cat on a walk, but still, cat is sometimes I be feeling like cats ain't pets. They just freeloading ass motherfuckers. But listen, that's neither here nor there. A lot of shit happened last night. The NFL draft happened last night. Now listen, I didn't really watch the NFL draft last night. I watched the Pat McAfee draft special. That's because that's probably what I'll be watching from this point on, rather than watching the ESPN draft. I'm just gonna tell it, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's ESPN and lost a viewer. I'm pretty sure my viewership means nothing to them and nothing in the grand scheme of things. But like I'm sure many people, I go to Pat McAfee for the draft now. Like, I don't even play ESPN in the background anymore. Like, the first year they did it, I had ESPN playing in the background. Last year, I looked at ESPN off and on. I did not watch the draft ESPN at all this year, could not have told you what clips happened from the draft or anything, because I watched the Pat McAfee show the entire time, because that was far more entertaining than watching the NFL draft. So, big things that happened in the draft last night. I'll reiterate the draft at a different point in time, but this video is a big Ravens video. This is a big Ravens video. We're going to talk about the Titans and the Eagles. Going to talk about Deebo Samuel a little bit. Going to talk about the Packers. But what I want to talk about, because obviously I am a Ravens fan, Baltimore Ravens, they drafted Kyle Hamilton with their first pick in the draft. That's a great pick. Matter of fact, let's start with that. The reality is this. When you draft the best safety in the draft in a lot of people's eyes, in most people's eyes, when you draft him and you sign Marcus Williams in the offseason, some people would say that's counterproductive, but they couldn't have known they was going to end up getting Kyle Hamilton. I actually don't find that to be counterproductive at all, because if you listen to me last year, one of my biggest things was I thought they were going to have to trade the two safeties that Baltimore had, because I didn't think those were good enough safeties. But Chuck Clark started having, success down the stretch. Elliott got hurt again, and now he a Lion. I wish him a lot of success. But I did think that they could survive with those two. But if they could find replacements for him, I would have replaced both of them. Because as much as I like Chuck Clark, I don't think Chuck Clark is an all-pro level safety. Plus, I just don't. If you watch Baltimore, because it's not hard to explain, but it'll take a long time to explain. As good as Chuck Clark is, to me, he is not a top tier. Like, if I had to rank him in like a tier list, and I hate doing this to players, but I think Chuck Clark is a third tier to second tier level safety. And in the NFL, I don't think you pay any of those safeties top money. I think you only pay the top tier safeties big money, because that's a position that is interchangeable for most teams unless you have a great one. Like, I would pay Tyrann Mathieu great money depending on the team, because I think he is a top safety. Jamal Adams, even though Jamal Adams isn't the cover safety that Tyrann Mathieu is, I still think he is a difference maker, and he is a top safety, so I would pay him top safety money. I don't even think Chuck Clark is being paid top safety money, but he getting paid more than your third safety would usually be getting paid. And you can't have that, because I think Kyle Hamilton should come in and start, to be completely honest with you. Like, I don't think he should sit on the bench. But what I think is going to happen, unless he just absolutely dominate in the offseason, they'll probably use him interchangeably with Clark. But the reality is, if Kyle Hamilton become exactly what they think he is going to become, Chuck Clark getting traded at the end of the year. At the latest, he'll be traded 2 years from now. But you cannot keep Chuck Clark as your third best safety, making that type of money, when there's other teams out here that could use a safety like a Chuck Clark. And it's you could use that money at other positions, because we'll get to this later, but you're going to need a receiver now. So I don't think that they'll keep Chuck Clark for too much longer, especially, he could get traded mid-season if Kyle Hamilton dominating. Like, Kyle Hamilton legit don't even have to be dominating. If he is just playing and he looked like a top safety, or like he gonna become a top safety, then you'll probably end up having to trade Chuck Clark. And that's no shot at Chuck Clark. Like, I'm not trying to take a shot. I think Chuck Clark is good at coming down in the box and making tackles here and there, even though I don't think he is like the greatest safety tackler I've ever seen. I think he is good in cover. He done definitely got better in coverage over the last couple years. But at the current moment, I just think if Kyle Hamilton, it's not even I think, if Kyle Hamilton become what everybody think he's going to become, Chuck Clark is out of here in like 2. And I don't want to say that disrespectfully, but he probably going to have to be traded to a different team that could use him far more than Baltimore. Because I had a homie on Twitter tell me, like, well, they could keep Chuck Clark because the Ravens like to run 3 safety sets. And I was like, yeah, but they would like to run that set with when their third safety ain't getting paid like the top 2 safeties. Also, they don't want their third safety to be getting paid nowhere near. He can't be in the top 20 of paid safeties. Can't have it. Because your third safety in those type of situations is usually going to, and that's when you're running like nickel and dime. you're going to have three. When you have these formations that put out multiple safeties or cornerbacks, it's not really multiple safeties. It's cornerbacks who done been converted to safeties because of their older age, or it's just safeties. It's because usually you don't put multiple safeties out, because nowadays you don't even have two safeties that can play in coverage. One of them is usually a box safety. All of your cornerbacks should be able to go out and play in coverage. So usually you put multiple corners on the field. An example is Baltimore wasn't running Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, and a third safety. They was running Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, Jimmy Smith, who is a cornerback converted to safety, but who will go down as a cornerback. So it's a difference. You don't run a 3 safety set. If you run in a set that's got 3 dudes looking like they running safety, one of them dudes is probably a cornerback, or more than likely is a cornerback. Mind you, in today's NFL, it's very rare that you see teams running sets that's putting 3 safeties over the top. Usually teams run 2 safeties over the top. Like an example is the Buffalo Bills. They run 2 safeties high, so you can't beat them deep and shit like that. And not both of them, but Jordan Poyer can come down in the box here and there, but he don't usually play in the box. He and Michael Hyde play in coverage, and they is great in playing in coverage. You get your cornerbacks. That's why they drafted a cornerback, the Bills, because you continue to put more cornerbacks out there. Because I like their defensive coordinator. I hate that I can't remember my man's name right now. He used to coach the Vikings, and he was with Baltimore at one point in time as one of our coordinators. But when you run these type of sets where it's got multiple corners on the field, those are corners, not safety. So the Baltimore fans shouldn't be worried about, well, not Baltimore fans, but that specific fan. That's my counter to him saying like they might keep Chuck Clark because of that. For one, you don't keep a third safety that's getting paid top 10, top 20 safety money. And you don't, and usually your third safety is not a 3 safety set. It's a dude, if he look like he playing high as a third safety, it's probably because he a cornerback and he playing in a slot, or it's some type of situation that would require him to put that many. Because it's usually nobody is putting 3 safeties on the field. I mean, nowadays you got safeties being converted into linebackers because of how bad safeties defend in coverage nowadays. Like, I truly believe if Jamal Adams get to the point where it's just, he just cannot defend in coverage at a certain point, because I don't think he is atrocious as people think, but I do recognize he is not as great in coverage as you would want a safety to be usually. If it ever get to the point where it's just no chance of him defending in coverage, they'll probably just move him down to linebacker. Like Keanu Neal. Like Keanu Neal is a linebacker now for Dallas, I believe. And he used to be a safety for the Falcons. They always move. That's why I'm telling you, bro. Every time I talk about these safeties and these box safeties, it always come back down to the man, the myth, the legend, Cam fucking Chancellor, a box safety who was not a box safety. He could play in coverage, and he could come down and dominate in the box. And because he was so great at coming down in coverage to play in the box, you thought he was a box safety. But no. I hate it when people say Cam Chancellor was a box safety. That's one of the most ignorant, disrespectful things you can say. Cam Chancellor was a complete safety. I'm going to be honest with you, and this might be a hot take in a lot of people's minds. If Cam Chancellor was able to put together a longer career, to me, no, fuck that. To me, Cam Chancellor's prime, I'd take him over Troy Polamalu's prime. And that's going to sound crazy to a lot of people. And then to Pittsburgh fans, it's going to be like, well, he a Baltimore fan, so he would say something stupid like that. But no. Listen to me. I'm not disrespecting Troy Polamalu. But what you got to understand is Troy Polamalu was not the cover safety that a lot of people try to make him out to be. Troy Polamalu resembled, Jamal Adams. Though he is not, his elite is not Troy Polamalu's elite. That's more the safety that he resembled. Because Troy Polamalu, while he could make a play in safety here and there, and he got the plays, usually it was because he was down in the box making those interceptions or something, jumping routes and shit like that. And when Troy Polamalu got to an older age, he was not nowhere near as good as other great safeties who aged well, like Ed Reed and whatnot. Like, bro, Troy Polamalu, when they took one of the dudes who never get enough credit for how great they were was Ryan Clark. Because if Troy Polamalu didn't have Ryan Clark, and sure, they probably could have had a different safety but he would have had to play like Ryan Clark, because Ryan Clark's ability to play in coverage and make plays in coverage is why you could have Troy Polamalu come down in the box and have so many sets where it was just one safety playing high most of the time, because you had great cornerbacks on the outside who can defend a man, and you had Troy Polamalu who could come up in the box and blitz quarterbacks, make plays in the short routes and shit like that. But he was not the player in coverage that people like to make it out to be. Go back and look at his interceptions. A lot of them shits was happening up close to the line of scrimmage and around that area. It wasn't deep cover things. Listen, and I'm not taking nothing away from Troy Polamalu. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I'm taking, and to me, the only way you really think this is really outlandish is if you didn't, for one, is because a lot of people will say this because Troy Polamalu off a name. But listen, I'm here to tell you right now, if you want to hear something outlandish, I'll tell you this. Troy Polamalu is nowhere near the player that Ed Reed was. I legit get irritated when people do comparisons with him, like who was the better safety, because you know it's going to be a bunch of bozos in the comments that's Steeler fan, and I'm not calling Steeler fans bozos, but it will be bozos, and it will be Steeler fans that's bozos in this situation, that's just off of fandom alone, that's going to be like, oh, I have to take Troy Polamalu because that's my guy, and it'll be the bozos in the comment so I can't even really be mad at those type of Pittsburgh fans, because they'll be like, I have no choice, I have to take Troy Polamalu, because those are fans that's legit acknowledging, like, if I wasn't a fan, I probably would take Reed. But then you got these dumbass fans who's just fans to the core. And I'm not saying them other dudes is, but they fan to make them blind, so they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, it's Troy Polamalu. It's not even close. Miss me with that, bro. Listen, you can call me biased because I'm a Ravens fan, and Ed Reed is one of my favorite players of all time. But Ed Reed could come down, and this is why, to me, Cam Chancellor resembled Ed Reed more than he resembled a Troy Polamalu. Because he could come down and play and hit hard in the box. I'm talking Ed Reed. And it was no safety in NFL history that was better in coverage than Ed Reed. Cam Chancellor could play in coverage and come down and play so great in the box that you thought he was a box safety, but he did not play in the box most of the time. Now, if I'm wrong, I will come back and admit that I was wrong on that. But if you go watch Cam Chancellor, he was not stuck in the box. He could play in coverage and come down. And his quickness, his speed, I'm telling you, Cam Chancellor was the closest thing to Ed Reed for a long time I had ever seen at the safety position. And Ed Reed was a free safety. Most of the days now, Cam Chancellor was a strong safety. Most strong safeties don't even have to come down, play great in coverage. Because most of them is box safeties now. It's rare that you get the Jordan Poyers now who can play so great in coverage. Because most of them come down and play in the box. Cam Chancellor could play in the box, and he could play great in coverage, just as great. I'm telling you, Cam Chancellor to me is a Hall of Famer. I don't know if his time, like if he done missed the ballot for first ballot or whatnot, but Cam Chancellor is a Hall of Famer. And him not being in the Hall of Fame yet, if he should have been in the Hall of Fame by now, then I gotta look that up. Because if his time done came up for him to been nominated for the Hall of Fame, because I think he done been retired for 5 years now. Cam Chancellor is a Hall of Famer, and you're not gonna convince me otherwise. Even though he had a short amount that's like saying Patrick Willis not a Hall of Famer. Patrick Willis is a Hall of Famer. His short career, but his prime, he was in his prime damn near his entirety of his short career. Just like Cam Chancellor. And you might not like Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas is a Hall of Famer. He was the best safety in the league for multiple years. I do not care about his off the field issues. That man was you don't even have to put him in the first ballot, even though I think he is a first ballot Hall of Famer, because I don't care about the accolades. No safety in the league was better than Earl Thomas after Ed Reed retired, basically. And it was people even comparing him to Ed Reed during his during the back end of Ed Reed's career, when Earl Thomas was the best safety in the football. So, to me, the Legion of Boom, specifically Richard Sherman, who is unquestionably a first ballot Hall of Famer, Like, to me, Richard Sherman is the one that nobody can question. Like, you can say whatever you want to, but you cannot question his Hall of Fame status. The other, Cam Chancellor, to me, is an unquestioned first ballot Hall of Fame, but you question it only because of the shortness of the career. And Earl Thomas, the only reason you question is because of his off-the-field issues. But he is also a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Straight up. Straight up! But we talked about Kyle Hamilton. The next thing for the Ravens, the big one for the Ravens trade Marquise Brown to the Arizona Cardinals in order to bring in. They traded him for the Cardinals' first round pick, and then they flipped that because they traded back and they ended up getting Tyler Lindenbaum, the best center in the draft, and something that Baltimore drastic. Like, Baltimore needed a fucking center. Not to mention he come from Iowa, and Marshall Yonder, the GOAT, came from Iowa. So, I'm feeling good about that pick already, to be honest with you. Not to mention he was tabbed as the best center in the draft and possibly the best offensive lineman in the draft. A lot of people saying he is a generational talent. So, I'm happy about that. But let's talk about the Marquise Brown, because if you followed me this year, I talked a lot about Marquise Brown. And I said towards the end of the year, and a lot at the end of the year, that the only reason Marquise Brown is still on this team is because of his relationship with Lamar. Because if they were legitimately making a decision based off of, like, it's time to trade, will we pay him? And like if they were going based off of his production on the field, not just the numbers, like the eye test and the numbers, he not getting the deal that they would offer him. He would not want. I just know, because Baltimore is not offering him top receiver money. Because respectfully, he ain't a top receiver. But this is what I'll say. I agree with Baltimore trading Brown, because obviously I was on that train at the end of the season. I thought that they should trade Marquise Brown. I thought let me break it down like this. And I understand Lamar didn't like the trade, but I think this was more so his brother. He lost a brother. Marquise Brown said he got 5 close dudes in his life, and Lamar is one of them, as is Kyler, but Lamar is one of them. So I just think that was a reaction based off of him losing his, brother. However, this is my thing about the market, and I think Lamar get over this as far as, like, when they start playing and you get other dudes producing. This is why I think this was a great trade. Because with Baltimore, I'm not saying this will be him with Arizona, but with Baltimore, Brown is not what they needed. He plays the outside receiver position, but he is only good at running one route. They call that a one-trick pony. On top of that one route that he was so great at running that one year, he has not been as dynamic running that one streak route ever since, because defenses know that's what he wants to do. So he is an outside receiver who can only really truly run one route good as far as getting vertical up the field. Okay. They also don't use him like they use the other smaller top receivers that play outside, or good small receivers that play outside, like a Tyreek Hill. You wouldn't even compare him to a Tyreek Hill, who is just as small as him and is an outside receiver who could play all outside, inside, it don't matter. He is not him. You can name a Devontae Smith, who played with the Philadelphia Eagles, who I don't even think have a legitimate quarterback who can get him the ball the way Marquise do. And he is a better outside receiver to me because his route running and his ability to separate without having to just have one route in his arsenal. He can run multiple routes. And you go around the league and you look at other receivers like a Cooper Kupp, who not as big as like the A.J. Browns and the Julio Joneses of the world. These are outside dudes who are outside dudes not because of height, but because they are so technically sound. Either they are efficient at running routes. They are great at creating separation on the back ends of their routes. They are not just outside run one streak up the field type of dudes. Those dudes usually run in the slot. Or you don't have them on the field if you don't have all the time, unless you have a legit number one receiver opposite of them, like a Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and D Hop and things like that, or receivers like that. So when you talk about the fact that he was not basically an outside, he couldn't do what you needed an outside receiver to do. And the one thing that he was great at, he really wasn't as great at moving forward after that one breakout year at doing it. So his frame, you would think, would make him a slot receiver. Well, the problem with that is he don't run slot receiver routes, because like we just said, he is not a great route runner. Just based off of what I've seen in Baltimore, Marquise is not a great route runner. If you move him into the slot, usually you have slot receivers who know they're going to take types like punishment and whatnot. You talk about Julian Edelman, you talk about Wes Welkers, you talk about Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is another receiver who can play in the slot and play outside. But you talk about receivers like that who know they're going to take punishment. Those are guys who usually are phenomenal at running their routes, because even though they know they're going to take punishment, they know their route, they're going to get open and catch this pass. Even dudes like that are very elusive. They know how to get loose after making those catches. And I saw a lot of improvement with Marquise in that. And I'll even say, listen, it's not all on Marquise. I just want to throw that out there first, because Greg Roman did not help this situation. I truly believe if there was a different coordinator, Marquise would still want to be here. The problem is, I don't think a different coordinator could really change that much for Marquise, because I don't think Marquise is an average receiver. I actually think Marquise is an above average receiver, and I think he's going to break out with the Arizona Cardinals. Because he had great seasons in Baltimore, even against the bad play calling with Greg Roman. I mean, Greg Roman had these dudes running routes in the same areas of the field. Like 3 receivers running into each other on the same areas of the field. He called up good plays for the tight end, but don't call up good plays for receivers. Marquise won't touch the ball for the 3 quarters, and then he'll finally start to try to get Marquise involved after that. That's all factual shit that Marquise should have a legitimate problem with. I'm not faulting him for that. And by the end of this, you'll probably see, I think this is great for Marquise and Baltimore. I'm not saying Baltimore got rid of a bad player. No. Marquise's production was limited for multiple reasons in Baltimore. He was not going to reach the potential that he think he can reach, and that I think he can reach too, in Baltimore. And it ain't because of the quarterback. It have nothing to do with Lamar Jackson. Because Lamar Jackson done got better every single year. You don't walk away from quarterbacks that are, for one, it's an MVP, a unanimous MVP, and continue to put in work in the offseason and show you that he get better and better. The man that got bigger, stronger, fat. Like, Lamar is not the problem. I truly believe his problem is Greg Roman. And I listened to his little interview on I Am Athlete, and I think he alluded very well that it was Greg Roman that was the problem. But on top of him not being able to truly be a slot receiver because he don't run great routes, he not a slot, and this is all, like I said, in Baltimore. And you'll realize why I'm saying I'm basing this off of what he did in Baltimore in a second. He didn't run great routes, and while he did make improvement, he wasn't really great after the catch most of the time. Like, Marquise Brown was it was a funny situation where he played your outside receiver but did not give you outside receiver type of production. And he started off the year pretty good. But then the next part of that is when you talk about the fact that he's not truly an outside receiver. He's supposed to be a slot but don't play the slot position the way you would think. He don't do shit that slot receivers are supposed to do. And then on top of that, the drops. Marquise Brown dropped way too many passes. Not to mention, people talk about the end of the year. The end of the year, Baltimore could have still made the playoffs. If you go back and watch certain games, like that Rams game, if Marquise Brown make a couple catches in that game that he dropped, they beat the Rams in that game. The Lions game was only as close as it was and needed Justin Tucker to break that record was because Marquise Brown dropped multiple touchdowns in that game. Wide open. That's a problem. And it's not the biggest problem. I told you, it's a lot of things as to why in Baltimore. Because you want to know who else had a drop problem? Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews is a beast. And he done found a way to overcome it. But Mark Andrews had a drop problem. Not only did he have a drop problem, he had a problem with dropping passes in big games and big moments. Go back and look in the playoffs. People like to talk about that Bills game. A lot of people was dropping passes in that Bills game. Marquise and Andrews were two of the suspects, the usual suspects. And at that point, even though Marquise dropped a lot of passes, he wasn't even dropping a lot of passes in big situations. Mark Andrews was dropping big passes in big situations because that's who Lamar went to. But then Lamar started to evolve that offense and get Marquise Brown involved in big moments. He started to get Marquise Brown more involved with the offense, and you're going to hear I had to cut it because some shit happened while I was... Either way, he started to get Marquise Brown more involved in the offense. And so once he started to get Marquise more involved in the offense, that's when his drops became very more prevalent. We could see it more because he dropping big passes in big situations. And while I do not think Tyler Huntley is a good quarterback, and I think people was grossly overrating him at the end of the year because of a hidden agenda against Lamar, bro, it was plays out there that Tyler Huntley had that could have been made if he had just caught the fucking ball. And he dropped multiple catches in big moments this year. So, and another thing on top of all that, in Baltimore, usually Marquise, it didn't get better when he was having bad games. Go look at the Detroit game. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's usually what happened with Marquise, because for some reason, I don't know what it is, but he can't get out of his own head when he is struggling. Like when he struggled, it get worse. That's why I hate it when he's struggling, because I know if he is struggling, it's going to be a long game. But in the same light, if he balling out from start at the beginning of the game, he'll probably be involved throughout the majority of the game, because Marquise done had big games in Baltimore. You look at the Cardinals game in Lamar's second year when Lamar won MVP, where he made a big catch down the sideline. You look at the playoff game that we lost against Tennessee, where he made that big catch over the shoulders. He done made big catches, and he can make big plays. That's why it's going to be a completely different thing when I talk about him in Arizona. Excuse me. But him in Baltimore was no longer a match. Baltimore need to go get a bigger receiver. They need to go and listen, I done gave up on the fact of Baltimore going out there and trading for a big time receiver like Philly did, or like the Bills did, or like any of these teams that go out and get their quarterbacks who are not a Lamar Jackson, great weapons. I done gave up on them doing that. I understand they're just going to keep drafting guys or getting guys that have been, on 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. I understand that's what's going to happen at this point. So, it is what it is. And when it comes to that, for some reason, Baltimore approach the offseason every year as if they do not need a quarterback. And that's what they've been doing the entirety of their team's franchise. And I think it's really disgusting as a fan of this team that they refuse to evolve. Oh, we can still run the ball at a great rate in a league where they throwing the ball all around. And we different. But have we won a fucking Super Bowl doing it? Lamar so very clearly wants this offense to evolve so he can throw the ball around the field. But he got an offensive coordinator who refuses to evolve and get better at his job instead, but he continues to be employed. I saw somebody tweet last night, I'm not shocked that Marquise Brown was traded, but I am shocked that he was traded before Greg Roman was fired. And I agree with that. I am shocked that he was traded before Greg Roman was fired. It's inexcusable, unexplainable as to how this man could still have a job at this point in time. But it is what it is. Like I said, when it comes to Baltimore, they keep thinking it's so innovative that we can still run the ball like this and be competitive and have a winning record and get to the playoffs every year. Yet and still, it's teams that throw the ball that keep winning these Super Bowls. But Baltimore keep approaching the offseason every year. We don't need receivers. And Baltimore is in one of them rare situations where they have a quarterback. They just refuse to get their quarterback weapons. This ain't even in Seattle where they had Russell Wilson and they got him weapons. They just wouldn't get him an offensive line or another running back. Baltimore keep getting Lamar all of that. But they continue to tell themselves, don't need a receiver. Don't need one. And so, I done given up on that. I understand Lamar is just going to have to pray that one of these dudes either just blow up or he just get to a point where he get these dudes like where Peyton Manning was turning everybody into a stud. And if that's the case, then they putting just so much pressure on Lamar. And it's this type of pressure is not usually put on most great quarterbacks. Usually you give your quarterback a break by getting them receivers and weapons and whatnot. In Lamar Jackson's case, they saying, man, we need you to be great and turn these dudes into greatness. And I think that's very unfair because people like to say, oh, well, Tom Brady did it. We can go over Tom Brady's receivers if you want to. Y'all keep telling me he played with nobodies, and I see Randy Moss. I see Wes Welker. I see Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman is not a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Wes Welker is. Randy Moss is. Gronkowski is the greatest tight end of all time. I know we don't talk about Aaron Hernandez. He was a great tight end before the man got to murdering and shit. But I think this was a great move by Baltimore because ultimately you flip that into a center that could be your franchise center for the foreseeable future, for the next decade plus. That immediately impacts Lamar Jackson. So I get that. But a receiver immediately impacts him also. And the fact that you rather keep gambling on receivers rather than just going out there and paying the price to get a bona fide stud is, to me, ridiculous and a stupid-ass business model when you can keep considering Marquise Brown was the first-round pick that has now been traded from this team. Yet again, in a receiver carousel. Because instead of just going out and getting the dude that they know they would have to pay, but they know he will be productive and be a top producer, they rather keep gambling. And to me, that is very unfair to Lamar Jackson. And if people want to say, oh, well, he getting paid, so it ain't. Well, let me see how many of y'all like to go to work at a disadvantage, knowing damn well that if you had certain things, it would make the job way easier. But your boss keep telling you, I get you everything else, but I'm not going to get you that one specific thing that will make life just way easier for you. Because, I can have a great offensive line. They can protect me all day long. Who the fuck am I throwing it to, though, if I have nobody to throw it, if I have no receivers, no productive receivers? Because a bad set of receivers will make a great offensive line look bad because they never get open. Because a great offensive line not holding off a team full of studs for 10 seconds, 5-6 seconds. No. That's at their absolute apex. On a regular basis, they're giving you more time than not, but you still don't want them just having to hold off every fucking game and shit like that. Now, obviously, when they do it, that's great, but you still got to be able to throw the ball to somebody. And on the flip side of this, I think this is a great trade for Arizona. Now, granted, I don't really think this moved the needle that much for Arizona because you already have D-Hop. But I do think this is a great fix for A.J. Green. Now, like I said, the problems that Marquise had in Baltimore, these could be rectified and eradicated in Arizona. I think Marquise Brown is going to be great with a team to do a lot of trickery. Arizona do a lot of fucking trickery. I think he'll do good with a team that like to send receivers on streaks, and they don't have a receiver right now who can do that. Well, now they do. They do not need receivers to be the greatest route runners just based off of how this offense is run. Wow, now they have a receiver who is not the greatest of route runners. So I believe Marquise Brown can succeed in this. And also what he did not have that he has now is a number one receiver to play opposite of him. Not a number one tight end, a number one receiver to play opposite of him. And they have Zach Ertz over there. And you still have A.J. Green, who I think will be a lot better in year 2. Do I think he will be the A.J. Green he was in Cincinnati? No. But he will be a better A.J. Green. So I believe this is a great trade for Arizona in a sense that if Marquise Brown can develop into what I think he can and what he think he can be, he will be a great fit for this team because he will be able to run the streak routes and get open a lot now because you have a guy who take a lot of pressure off of you in D-Hop. He don't have to be the greatest of route runners. You can move him inside and outside now because you have two dudes who can bona fide play the outside position. You have another dude in Rondale Moore who can take pressure off of him. And while it sounds crazy that I'm saying so many things have to be here for him to truly succeed, that's my point. He's not the number one receiver that can just be the reason other dudes succeed. That was Mark Andrews. So it was no purpose in Baltimore continuing to pay him and him continuing to be on a team where he felt like he wasn't treated as a number one dude. He wasn't having stuff drawn up for him continuously to be successful. I don't know if that will happen for him here, but I know Kyler Murray and him played in college and they like each other. And he said that's one of his closest friends and his 5 guys. So shout out to 5 guys. But so I know that he will at least come into this situation believing that he will have a chance to succeed. Not to mention, AJ Green won't be there that much longer, most likely. So it will be, a chance for. Now, what I don't really like about this trade is you get another short receiver with a short quarterback, and Rondale Moore is a short guy too. Like I said, AJ Green probably won't be there for too much longer. So I do have problems with that because I don't think Kyler Murray is a legitimate drop back quarterback. I think they got to do a lot of crazy shit with their offense to have success. But I do believe this is a guy who can do it. But if it ever come down to a situation where you just have to have route running, if you're relying on him to do all that type of stuff strictly, I don't think that could be done. But I think on a game-to-game basis, like every other game or so, Marquise Brown could be Hollywood Brown for them. I truly believe that. And it ain't because the quarterback. It's because of the system and the things that they do in Arizona as to why they could be successful. Because I think Lamar Jackson is better than Kyler Murray. I know Lamar Jackson is better than Kyler Murray. So I think this is a win-win for both teams. Plus, I don't think Marquise... Now, this is a lose-lose if Marquise Brown demanding top-tier money. Because he could come to this team and say, well, now you traded me and you gave up a first-round pick, so now I want to be paid. And that'll be a tricky situation because Marquise Brown is not a top 20 receiver, in my opinion. And that's probably disrespectful because I just know he ain't the top. He ain't one of the elite receivers or even in that second tier receivers that get paid the top tier money sometimes. Now, if he get paid, I don't care. I want everybody to get paid. Fleece these motherfuckers. But if you were Arizona and you just gave up a first round pick that was a valuable first round pick in that draft, you probably will have to pay him. Now, it'll be great if you don't have to pay him top tier receiver money, but hey, who knows? But I do think this could end up being a great trade. Now, the bigger trade to me tonight wasn't even the Baltimore one. What made this one so big was that Baltimore got the center off of it. What the big trade to me was Tennessee trading A.J. Brown to Philly. And I don't care about what Tennessee got back. The thing to me was A.J. Brown going to Philly because this is further proof. This situation reminds me of the Cleveland situation where a team do absolutely everything they can to help their quarterback and give their quarterback no excuses. You got Miles Sanders in the backfield now. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert now. It's no excuses for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, to me, the development that they should be doing with him and the things like for him, like different, whatever the off-season program is to help Jalen Hurts get better as a passer from the pocket and a passer going down the field, not with all these screens and receiver screens and these short routes and shit like that. No. You have the receivers to be able to be dominant now. I expect them to put an offensive play because the offensive, system you ran last year is not conducive to receivers. And much like Baltimore's system that they ran, that they still run for some reason, even though they have a quarterback who can throw the ball down the field. Receivers will not enjoy playing in this type of system for too long. Now, A.J. Brown ain't going nowhere because he just signed an extension. I think it was 5 years, $100 million. But this team, if Jalen Hurts can develop into what you want him to develop into, which is just basically a better passer, this team can win this division. This team can win this division. I don't know what it is about Philly, but Philly can rise to the occasion when they playing against a great team, in my opinion. Like, I think they got the players that's done been there, done that. Coaching staff, the organization done been there, done that. They will rise to the occasion, unlike the fucking Dallas Cowboys. All that talent on Dallas, and they still never rise to the occasion against good teams. If you give Philly a good team, I believe that this team will be able to rise up and actually be the best team in this division, not just because they beat teams in the division, but because they can actually beat other good teams around the NFL. And it's all going to hinge on Jalen Hurts' development. But this is the beauty of it all. Let's say Jalen Hurts don't develop into what you want him to within the next year or so, because they ain't giving him a ton of more time now because they got him weapons. This team will go out and make a trade, or they will try to hit in the draft again. And I believe Baker Mayfield could end up being fool's gold for this team. Because the Steelers ain't getting Baker. They just drafted a quarterback last night. They're not taking Baker Mayfield. I always thought the Lions would get him, but the Lions didn't get a receiver last night either. Didn't get a quarterback either last night. So maybe that's still on the table. However, I really think Jalen Hurts, he on the clock now. You got this type of weaponry. This is a good team. This is a team that will compete if their quarterback is competitive. Unlike Dallas, like I keep saying, that continue to fold in big games and against big teams and good teams. So I like this move. I love this move for Philly. Dead ass. I think this is a huge move for Philly. A.J. Brown, Smith, Goddard, Miles Sanders, like, yo. And I'm pretty sure it's other dudes on that team that'll have success now because you got those weapons now. Boy. Hey, shout out to A.J. Brown, bro. Shout out to A.J. Brown. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with Tennessee. I done heard great things about Tennessee. And while I do not like Philadelphia fans for the most part, Philadelphia is a hell of a city to play in. I'm not stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like Citizens Bank Field for the Citizens Ballpark is beautiful for the Phillies. Mind you, my Phillies just swept the Rockies. But, yeah. Shout out to A.J. Brown, man. Shout out to him. But this was just a quick look. Oh, and you know what? We do got to talk about something real fast before we end this because this was just supposed to be a quick snippet. But the Packers, once again, they do not get a receiver in the first round of the draft. Okay. Here we go. I guess Aaron Rodgers is going to have to rely on receivers that's possibly in the second or third, fourth, developing. You really banking on Aaron Rodgers, an older dude, to still play at MVP level, relying that his body won't break down on him and relying that he's still as sharp as I don't know, man. Because as good as Aaron Rodgers is, I thought last year he played very stat knowingly. Like, oh, I can't throw a bad pass or an interception here or that. And, you know, and they had the defense last year and wasn't being able to put up a lot of points on offense. So, I don't know, man. You can't score that great with Devontae Adams, and now you take him away, and I'm supposed to think this team, hey, man, it's going to be interesting. But with that, I appreciate you for joining me on another episode of Kicking It with Saint. Tell somebody you fuck with him. Tell somebody you love him, man. Saint out.
Scared cause I'm drowning in silence with bad thoughts. These days I don't have nothing to say, man, the bag talks. I put in headphones on my driver. Pull up to the spot and give a good dick and Godiva. I can't lie, I'm uninspired. No more pillow talking about nonsense. I only stick around to put some band-aids on my conscience. I don't know why I feel so bad, nigga. That's what we do, no foundation. We don't build no more, we just screw. Half a bottle of Henny, girl, I'm going with the wind. The same niggas say they happy for me, ain't want me to win. So I'm done on my friends. Don't need help popping Coronas and reminiscing. I just call up Big Bro J and say it's time for venting. If I live forever, I hold this hate for some centuries. You don't know how much I have you doing what it meant to me, but motherfuck all that. I don't even offer up the time to make the call back. Stupid Lodo.